mobile broadband, and basically also starting to look at, okay, we're getting it now, what's next with mobile broadband, what's happening in that particular area, and then obviously also in relation to all the other developers that are happening, such as, for example, the NBN. So basically what we are going to see is more of the same. It's not that suddenly there will be a huge change in what's happening with mobile broadband. The change will be what is actually going to happen with the applications that are being pushed over the network. So the innovations are coming from the Googles and the Apples and the million sort of apps developers around the world, rather than it's coming from the mobile operators themselves. Basically, the mobile operators missed the boat when in 1997, 1998, we started to see the arrival of internet over mobile. You know, you had the 2G network that at that point in time had a technology called WAP, W-A-P, and that allowed internet over mobile network. What the mobile operators did at that point in time, they said, you beauty, we build portals and we charge everybody who wants to put an app on it 80% of their revenue, and we charge the users an arm and a leg so that they get totally bill shocked when they are using internet over the mobile, and you know, that's how we operate the internet over the mobile network. Now obviously that didn't work. 10 years later they still hadn't changed. They still operated the mobile portals, and they still charged everybody an arm and a leg. And then obviously Apple arrived with the iPhone, and within 12 months the whole mobile portal market from all 500 mobile operators around the world crashed instantly, because you know, the app of course was taking over the sort of proprietary portal system that was in place with all those mobile operators around the world. So since that time we now have a situation whereby the content providers, the app providers, can create more and better apps independently of the mobile operators. Yes, you have to put them in the App Store, or you have to put them in the Google Store, but you know, that is not charging. They are not charging 80% of the revenue, as for example the telcos did when they operated on their portals. The other thing that you start seeing happening is, again, nothing to do with the mobile operators, but to do with the device operators, the device producers, is that you get all sorts of smarts included in your mobile phone. So there will be sensors in it, there will be devices that can be linked up to wearable devices on your body or anywhere else, and you really start seeing some other interesting applications arriving on that. So think about, you know, M2M, machine-to-machine technologies, but then linked to a mobile phone, you know, where it can actually start looking at your health, it can look at your condition, it can look at your performance if you're a sports person. You can do all sorts of things in that area with wearable sensors linked to your smartphone, linked to the network, and interesting applications will be developed in that particular area. What you have to be careful of, and you know, I just made a comment the other day regarding Google Glass, yeah, that is one of those wearable devices where you can do that, yeah, but you have to be careful that, you know, if you start using Google Glasses, yeah, that you don't get punched in the face by somebody in front of you who said, I don't want to be on your camera, yeah. So these wearable devices could have a far more social impact than a technology impact. So you really have to start looking at what is acceptable in society, what can be done, what does society accept. I'm not talking about the government, I'm talking about you and I be sitting in a bar, having a drink, and somebody with Google Glasses sits in front of you. You know, you don't necessarily want to be on that camera next 5 minutes on the Facebook or something like that, yeah? So that are the sort of situations that we increasingly will start facing with these smart devices and the applications that are connected to it. Linked to the broader system, if you start looking at traffic information, if you start looking at weather information, if you start looking at your own business information, etc., that interconnection between the devices and between the people, of course, is going to increasingly become more important. You know, the next sort of development in telecommunications, first we had, you know, most of you will all remember the fact that we had a phone hanging on the wall in the house. Yeah, you have to be careful because, you know, if you now people under 20, 25 don't necessarily know what you're talking about. So but we had houses and we had fixed phones hanging on the wall. So the first thing what telecommunications did was actually link houses, yeah, because then the phone went, everybody ran to the phone, and it was for somebody else, yeah. So, you know, there was continuously this sort of situation. You didn't connect to a person. Then the mobile phone arrived, and obviously that started to connect people. So you suddenly went from 8 million phones hanging on the walls to 25 million phones in people's pockets. The next thing is another quantum leap, and that will mean that the communication will take place directly on an M2M basis, machine to machine, without human interference. Yes, human control, but not necessarily interference. So information that's gathered, you know, while you're driving in the car, is gathering information about weather and about traffic information, is feedback to you while you're driving in the car without any interference from you at that point in time. Ask for it, it gets displayed on the screen in the car. Same applies to health information. You know, if you've got sensors on your body, if you've got heart problems or other problems, then the doctor could actually use these sensors. Information goes straight to a doctor, a nurse, a carer, or whatever, and action can be taken independent from you, depending on the information that's happening there. So you see a lot of these new developments happening, and you really literally will start talking about hundreds of millions of sensors that will be implemented. You know, think about smart meters, think about smart appliances, think about, you know, traffic information. The roads will be connected to it, bridges, ferries, trains, buses, etc. Yeah, and you already start seeing some of these apps happening. You know, we wanted to take the ferry this morning, and obviously with the fog that wasn't possible. And you see that that sort of information is gathered automatically and instantly fed to people, you know, like us, who at that point in time were interested in ferry information. So that is information that is automatically gathered straight into the computer and gets to you. Now, sometimes at this point in time, there might be some people at the traffic, by the transport people, that are keying in messages, but increasingly that will be bypassed with real-time information that's going to be collected there. Now, if you talk about this real-time information, then the mobile network will need to be connected to the fiber optic network. You know, you already see with every single development in mobile technology, we need more base stations. And more base stations needs to be connected to the fixed network, offload the information as soon as possible from the mobile network onto the fixed network. So the ultimate in mobile technology will be that there will be devices on every street corner and later on in every house that will be connected to the fiber optic network in order to run your mobile applications. And you know, most of you already, when you use your smartphone and you use your tablet at home, you are not connected to the mobile phone. You are connected to a Wi-Fi connection, which goes through your fixed line, you know, to the fixed line network. So lots of people are saying, oh, we don't need an NBN because it's all wireless nowadays, yeah? Think a little bit more and you know that quite soon after it leaves your mobile phone, it actually ends up in a fixed network. So you do need a fiber optic network in order to run a proper mobile network, yeah? So these are some of the things that you see happening in that area. On the industry side, as I mentioned, there's not going to happen much on the mobile side, on the operator side, on the Telstra, Optus, Vodafone. And you see they're all basically struggling because they have to make huge investments in extending the network in order to facilitate all the broadband applications that we want. But we are not going to pay more for our broadband connection. The ARPU, the average revenue per user on a mobile phone, is not changing that dramatically between now and next year and past year. It's not that you suddenly say, we're now on broadband, I'm now going to spend $1,000 a month on mobile. Yeah? You're not going to do that. So the operators have a problem that they have to invest, and actually the money goes to the Apples and the Googles and the Android and all these application providers, rather than the value added of all of these developments is not going to the mobile operators themselves. So you see a commoditization of the whole network, and that's why you see Telstra just made an announcement it's going to cut staff. Yeah, it has to cut staff because you have to take cost out of your company. If you don't get more revenue for your services, you have to start taking cost out. And that obviously is one of the big things that's happening in the telecommunications industry in general, is that if you now look, for example, at Skype, yeah? Skype runs with less than 10% of the people that are employed by any telco. And they operate a telecommunications service to 500 million, 700 million people. So if you can run a telecommunications service to 500, 600, 700 million people for 10% of the cost of a telco, then you can start seeing where the problems are in the telco industry. So the industry will have to change and will have to start taking more and more cost out of its operation in order to stay competitive with the Skypes and the Facebooks and the Googles and the Apples of this world, who increasingly are going to rule the communications element that are taking place on the network. Yeah? Imagine how many telephone calls we still make over the fixed network in comparison to the emails that we send. Now the telephone calls in the old days, was a nice money spinner for the telco. Emails, fraction of course. Yeah? So you really see the problem that the industry has, the telecommunications industry has, in relation to the access to the services. So the control of the mobile network and the mobile operations increasingly will flow to the vendors of smartphones, etc., and to the application providers. So you really see a shift. If you go 5, 10 years ago, the mobile operators, they dominated the mobile industry. Now they don't dominate the mobile industry anymore. The focus is on the vendors and the focus is on the applications. So it's a huge shift in how the industry has to operate. I already mentioned the mobile industry desperately need deeper fiber. They need an NBN in order to be successful. They need to offload as much as possible of their traffic to the fixed network. Another level of competition, of course, will be for the Wi-Fi, from the Wi-Fi. There is now in the last in the last 12 months, I would say, in Australia, now also more emphasis on Wi-Fi. We're just back from a trip basically around the world, went to Mexico, went to Spain, went to Holland, went to Germany, and what you see in these countries is an absolute spread of Wi-Fi everywhere. You can't go in any Spanish city where you don't have free Wi-Fi. You can't go anywhere in Mexico City where there is no free Wi-Fi. So it's really, we are running far behind in that respect. You can't go to any shopping center in the United States where there is no Wi-Fi. Now here Woolworths only recently announced they're going to move into it. Yeah? So we are running approximately 2 years behind in Wi-Fi, but we are quickly catching up. And company here behind us, Altai, are involved in Wi-Fi. And what you see happening is that sort of companies are increasingly installing their gear in shopping centers, in business centers. The councils, what was it, only, can't remember which council it was. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, said, we're going to provide free Wi-Fi access in all of the buses. Yeah, was it no, it was Newcastle. So Newcastle, 2 hours free of charge. And when you're on the bus in Newcastle, you get free. Parramatta has it. You really start seeing that particularly councils are stepping into that area. So it will be very interesting to see the dynamic between the mobile networks and the Wi-Fi networks. Now we all know that Wi-Fi is not always reliable, it's slow. Try to use it here and you will find out it's very slow. So you have that sort of a situation. But people are going to make decisions. I'm sitting in a cafe, I've got some time, I'm using the Wi-Fi, or I'm using the mobile network, things like that. People are going to make that sort of decisions. But Wi-Fi is going to play an increasingly more important role in the whole situation of the mobile telephony mix. And what you see is that now an organization such as Woolworths is not doing that out of charity. They're not saying, you know, out of charity we put a Wi-Fi system in our shopping centers. No, of course not. They figured out, that people are staying longer in the shop, that people are using particular apps that guides them to particular products. They can use it as a marketing tool to actually have a captive audience of customers in the shop and actually start using that more and more. Same of course applies to shopping centers in general. You know, they really believe, and they have evidence, that people stay longer in the shopping center, staying longer in a cafe, have a second cup of coffee, you know, buy something extra because of the fact that they are sitting and doing some work or having some fun on their with their laptop or smartphone or tablet or whatever, using Wi-Fi. So the whole equation is changing from the cost of Wi-Fi. Now, I quite often compare that if you go to the newsagent and you buy, you know, the Sydney Morning Herald or the Australian or whatever, and you put your $2 on the counter, then nobody will say, and now I need an extra $1 for the paper it's printed on. You would say, what? What are you doing? No, that's how the telecommunications industry works. You want to buy an app, you use an app, and then suddenly say, well, we need extra money to get access to the app. That will slowly move away. You know, we will slowly start seeing that access as a saleable product is going to move away, and that becomes free of charge, embedded in the services that you buy. And with Wi-Fi, you already have a good example of how that works. You know, where you start seeing that the benefits are not that I pay for the Wi-Fi connection, but the benefit is that I stay longer in the shopping center, that as a tourist I stay longer in a tourist area where there is Wi-Fi and things like that. So that are the economic benefits rather than the directly monetized access benefits that you get as an industry from doing that. Now, if you start thinking about it, if you go back a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, and then you start talking about the whole discussion we had with the NBN. The reason why we got the NBN was Telstra was so obnoxious in monopolizing the telecommunications network that the government said, we step in and we actually going to end this situation because we don't want a monopolized telecommunications network. There is more than just making money for Telstra. There's the national benefits, the social benefits, economic benefits and things like that. I bet that within 5 years we will have a discussion along the same lines in relation to mobile. Mobile is going to be more and more dominated by Telstra, and not because they're ugly or obnoxious, but they're doing a very good job and they're very rich. You know, they've got lots of money, so they bought more spectrum than anybody else last month in the spectrum auctions, and therefore they can handle more traffic on their network, can look after more customers, and therefore will be bigger than anybody else. Now, how long will it take for example, the struggling Vodafone to actually move out of the market? I hope I'm wrong, and I wish Vodafone a long life, but the troubles that up till now they have, losing customers month after month, now for 2 years, that is killing a company like Vodafone, obviously. So then you end up with two. Now Optus has already less spectrum, bought less spectrum than Telstra. This is not happening next month. This is happening 2, 3, 4 years from now. And that's the whole sort of situation where you get a dominance in that. If you talk about the commoditization, then the only thing is consolidation. You have to take cost out. You cannot run 3 telecommunications mobile networks on every corner of the street with LTE. You need mobile stations in every corner of the street. You know, how efficient is it to have 3 stations on every corner of the street? Or actually are you saying we utilize the infrastructure as a utility and you offer the service on top of that? The problem of course for the telcos is, as I mentioned at the start, is they missed the boat. They don't have the value-added services anymore, the portals, you know, that has gone to the apps and the Apples and the Googles. They are only left with the infrastructure. So it will be very interesting to see over the next 5 years what happens in the consolidation of the infrastructure in that area. And again, the NBN will play a role, the free Wi-Fi will play a role in all of that. So it will be a very dynamic market. So as I mentioned that these sort of situations happening, but for example in London, the transport authorities are now building a huge Wi-Fi system throughout the underground in London. All Wi-Fi, all the next generation Wi-Fi. They now check when doors are open and closed. They can check if the exit signs work. There will be sensors everywhere. There will be sensors on all of the stations, on gates, on doors, on lights, yeah, just to make the whole operation more effective, efficient, and actually start saving cost, yeah, in having to run around with maintenance people and things like that. So the whole underground in London will be one big Wi-Fi system, and on top of that, they are saying, oh, and by the way, if you're traveling on the train, you get free Wi-Fi. But the benefits for London Transport is not to the customers. The benefits are the M2M applications that they are building around a super Wi-Fi system in the underground. And on top of that, as I mentioned, the customers get free access on the internet. So you really start seeing totally different business models arriving in the industry that are going to dominate the future of where the money is flowing, where the money is flowing, who is earning money, and things like that. Obviously, you do need the infrastructure. I'm not saying that the infrastructure is not going to be important, but the question is, who is going to invest in the infrastructure? And that's what you see with the NBN, is that in the end, it's highly unlikely that that a country can afford 2 or 3 fiber to the home cables going to every house. We don't get it with electricity, we don't get it with water. Highly unlikely that it makes economic sense to have 3 systems running into the house. At the same time, highly unlikely that somebody in outback Australia is going to freely look after electricity, water, telecommunications. So you have to have government guidance, government organizations that make sure that everybody get access to those of basic services. And I would argue that access to telecommunications is a basic service. I think more people will be in trouble when they are out of when they don't have their phone or when they're out of electricity. So of course, for a longer period of time you can't miss electricity. For a short period of time, you will say, okay, if I'm a day without electricity, I can survive. If I'm a day without a telephone, a business could collapse. I mean, that might be a little bit too much, but you know what I'm saying. So you should argue how important is telecommunications for a society, for an economy, in order to survive. So I think that the commoditization of the network, added with things like Wi-Fi and NBN, is going to change this industry quite forever.